Shalom, welcome to the Jewish View. My name is Rabbi Nachman Simon with the Chabad House of Delmar, together with my co-host Mark Ronich of Statewide News Service, JBizTechValley.com, and now columnist for the Jewish Press.
Yeah, it's a very well-known and well-respected newspaper. It's a national publication. I write a column called The Albany Beat, and it connects government with the Jewish community, or not, as the case may be. So I'm having a lot of fun doing that. But with us today is our very special guest. It's Joe Mancini, who's from Schenectady County Probation Director, and we have a lot of interesting topics to discuss with him. So welcome to the Jewish View.
Thank you.
You'll let Mark out over here for the TV show over here?
It depends. Any tough questions?
Oh boy, okay,
right,
I'll keep that in mind. So tell us what differences between probation and parole, because people do get that mixed up a lot.
Probation is the community alternative to jail and prison. Parole is once they go to jail or prison, they are found that community supervision wasn't appropriate, they do their time, then they come out on parole. And parole supervises them in the community. We are the alternative to jail and prison. We supervise them. They don't need to go to jail or prison. We supervise them at that point.
But isn't it where you could still go to county jail, and when you get out, you're like on 5 years probation?
There are split sentences where you'll be sentenced to 6 months jail, 5 years probation.
Right.
There are those cases. But
that I
if you're sentenced...
innocently know about.
Yeah, I won't ask how. Yeah, so there are those cases where you get the split sentence.
Okay, and how often would a probation officer visit an ex-con?
Depending on the level, when we get a case, we're asked to do a pre-sentence investigation by the court, and what we do is what's called the COMPASS assessment, and it assesses their attitude as far as accepting responsibility for the offense, their criminal history, their ties to the community, mental health issues, social skills, those type of things, and there's probably about 100 some questions that we'll ask during the interview. We input the data, and then it gives us a profile. And so they're broken down into low, moderate, or high risk, or very high. So depending on their classification, that'll determine our level of intensity and visitation, and how often we see them. And
how, so what approximately, I mean, if they're from the highest level to the lowest level, might it be every week, every month, and then every maybe 5 months for a low, for a good guy?
It's typically, the very high will be twice a week, high once a week. Your moderate, twice a month, low risk, once a month.
Okay.
The high risk, we start off pretty intensive, and then as they, are doing well, they do meet certain outcomes, we can reclassify and lower the...
How many people are on probation in Schenectady County?
For adults, we currently have 1,300.
1,300, and how many probation officers?
We have, doing adult supervision, 35, I believe. 35.
Wow.
It's usually probation, a year, 5 years. If you were saying 5 years.
For
typical?
Class B misdemeanor, which we don't get too many, that's 1 year. But the typical is A misdemeanor, that'll be 3 years, and then a felony is 5 years.
And you have to have this, or I mean, is this just part of any normal sentencing, or they'll say, oh, just do 1 year in jail and that's it, period?
Some will opt to do a year in jail because they don't want to jump through the hoops, like file the probation conditions. Sometimes they say, this is such a hassle, I'd rather do my time, do the year. Yeah. But typically they, they'll decide to choose us.
Because anything more than a year is state prison.
Yeah.
Right? So
yeah,
a year or less is county jail.
Yeah.
And so you have 1,300 people on probation, but how many again of
35?
What is it?
Doing adult supervision is not, it's probably
so the
a little lower than that. Yeah,
this ratio is high.
It is, and
so how do you get to everyone in either a week or a month or?
Thankfully, the majority are low risk.
Right.
So it's the once a month. We pool the high risk. We have specialized caseloads. We have domestic violence, specialized caseload, mental health, and sex offender, and actually DWI, where those caseloads are a little bit more manageable. They're smaller. And then your other offenses, lower risk offenses, more of a maintenance thing. We don't need to see them as often.
When it say that, what do you mean see them? Because a little bit, I mean, I do volunteer work at the state prison, and the guys tell me when they get out, they have to do it. Sometimes they're inhibited that they can't work. They say that, you know, like a job will be, I mean, that's what I'm saying, some of the conditions, that's what I'm asking you, like, listen, they're manual laborers, and they have to be out at 5:30 in the morning. You know, you see people, even the garbage men, you know, I'm just saying, they're out at 5:30, and they're not allowed to be out that early. They're not allowed at night, they say, and sometimes
Well, you can get exceptions from the judge, can't you? I mean, if you have an opportunity.
Typically, that's not our barriers for, you know, on probation. If they're coming out of prison,
parole.
maybe because of the nature of the offense. I mean, obviously, sex offenders, it would be a little bit different.
Yeah.
But typically, we want to, you know, remove barriers to employment. You know, we want to give them every opportunity to succeed, not get in the way of it. So those we would overcome. If it's, you know, if we're in the way of them working, you know, we're not
the problem comes in, I presume, is when they do these things that they don't tell the probation officer about it, and let's say they have a family event outside of their restricted area. Let's say it's outside New York State or outside Schenectady County, and then they're traveling and they think they'll just be right back, and they think that they'll get away with it, no one will notice, and then boom, something happens when they're in the other municipality or the state, and then they got to
notified.
Sheepishly,
you didn't tell us.
You know. But you know, it's interesting on the employment applications. They always say, you know, have you ever been convicted of a felony? And I go, convicted, huh?
Yeah.
Is that the key word?
Convicted, right.
So right away, that's why I don't have any jobs. No.
There you go. You're hearing the Jewish view. Right. We didn't ask for a background check to be on the Jewish view.
So what, do you see improvements needed in the probation, in the field of probation? Or are you pretty good with?
You know, I do see a lot of room for improving it. When I first started in 1989, we had a reimbursement rate from the state at 46%. So any expenses we got the locality got reimbursed. We're down to just under 11%.
Wow.
The local counties have had to pick up those costs. So we've had to trim, and we can't purchase other prevention, you know, programs that might help us. We don't have that funding. So I'd like to see that change a little, so we can, you know, you have a probation supervision, but also be able to advocate for, you know, appropriate services that can help address the issues that they're dealing with.
How long have you been in this position?
So, like I said, I started in 89. Yep.
99.
89.
89. And then in this current as director?
Oh, the director, 2010, I became director.
2010, so it was 4 years, 5 years, okay. So what did you do before 1989?
I actually was a welfare fraud investigator in Saratoga County. I started there as did that for 4 years, and it was a interesting job.
Well, it's the same line of work.
Well, you know,
keeping tabs on.
Yeah, but it wasn't much. I like the behavior change aspect of it.
You know, fewer people are better. That's always a big issue, and Mark is a little bit hinting to that they, again, in the prison system, they say there's a 50%. Correct me if I'm wrong. You're in the, you know, you're in
recidivism, right?
Yeah, and. I mean, you think you help people? I mean, you advise, like, say, maybe a job, like we were just talking before. Hey, you know, pal, you know, I'm doing all right, but I just can't find a job, or, you know, the other problems that, you know, come up in life, and especially for a jailbird, someone who's already, you know, obviously convicted. Life is so much harder for them, even if they want to get themselves together. I know, again, they complain to me that in a felony, they can't get even low-level jobs, even in supermarkets, because they'll think they'll rip them off. So here you go, you know, he's not trained for too much. All he can do is low-level jobs, and then half the low-level jobs. He says, well, we don't want you because you're a thief, you know, or you're a druggie, you know, who knows what you're going to do. I mean, is there part of advising or just keeping tabs on people?
We currently have 3 people in the state program right now, a training program. It's a pretty intensive one. It's called Offender Workforce Development, Ready, Set, Work. And what it's all about is you run groups on and teaching offenders those skills, how to overcome those barriers to having a felony conviction, whether it be certificate of relief from disabilities, and also networking with the other agencies that network with employers, or where we can vouch for that person, say, you know, this person made a mistake, you know, we're providing supervision. Can you help us, you know, put this person into a position where...
Because bad things happen to good people.
Right.
and
Right.
you got to take that
It
into
goes
account.
the other
Yeah.
way, though, also. It's risky because I know a person in my temple said he ran a restaurant. It wasn't kosher, but we won't talk about that. But in any case, he gave a guy a chance. And then one day he just took all the money of the cash register and got out of there. I mean, so like I say, you're not going to get 100%. I mean, it's not saying your fault or anybody's fault. It's just the nature of the situation. I know people in prison, and they tell me right up front, they're sitting with, set the frame for people. You're in a maximum security prison. And they says, yeah, I'm going to go back and sell drugs. Says, and I tell you're going to sell drugs. Usually I'm a mild-mannered guy. I deal with people. But, I see these guys need get yelled at. This is what, you want to be here? Look at them bars. You're going to be back again? And so they're out up front. It's not like, well, I'm going to try, and who knows? I can't make a buck, so I may have to revert back to my...
3 hots in a cot.
Yeah, what do you see in their mind? Like, do they see that making a living is possible for them? I mean,
No,
like,
it's it
this
really
is what
is
I
their
do. This
life,
is what I'm going to do when I get out of here.
more of a life behind bars, and they don't have, they're planning their while they're behind bars, whether it's the county jail or the state prison, they're planning their next crime.
Yeah.
And because they want to get out. When I had this tour of the Chautauqua County Jail, the sheriff was giving me the tour, and he was showing me all the, they round up the usual suspects when something happens, and all the people along the row there that they was repeat offenders, and they, he goes, oh yeah, this guy is out for 10 days, and then he's back here for 6 months, and he's out for 10 days, and and I was like, and this goes back into the 80s when I took that tour. I mean, nothing has changed.
Yeah.
It's just there's no education, there's nothing. The people feel hopeless, they feel depressed.
There is education in the state prison system.
Well,
they do try, that's what I'm saying.
They learn how to be lawyers, and they read all the legal books so that they could sue the state.
We got to stop that.
So what's the most difficult part of your job as probation director, or for your probation officers?
I think it's being in the field. Sometimes they're concerned, sometimes for their safety. I think their biggest frustration is usually the drug addicted ones that, they're really trying to get the folks to do the right thing, do what they need to do, and you just see them come back, and you can't get them off. It's either the heroin, most of the time it's a drug or alcohol. The frustration that, they are with these people from anywhere from 3 to 5 years, working on trying to get them to do what they need to do, and seeing them slip up or the drug get the best of them.
They're not allowed to have alcohol while they're on...
Depends on the offense.
Probation.
Yeah.
Well, PWI, you can't have alcohol.
Yeah. It depends on the offense, and depends on the judge. There are certain offense categories we've wanted it in there, and the judge or defense attorney has said, no, it wasn't an alcohol-related offense, like a sex offender, maybe, or domestic violence. They're more apt to reoffend if they're intoxicated, but if it wasn't related to the offense, sometimes the defense attorney may have an issue with that being part of it. But we try to put it in, because that's certainly...
Because it only leads to problems.
Yeah.
Now, I got to ask you about this program, because it really, or not program, this movie, Kids for Cash. That sounds really bizarre, that sounds real sleazy, that title. But tell us, it's a documentary.
I saw that at Proctor's. They had a screening, and I was asked to be on the panel with a couple other folks. And just was amazing that the lack of checks and balances in the juvenile system as it was. And where they had these juvenile facilities, and judges were, for very minute reasons, like a truant or someone being, yelling back, talking to their parent, were putting these kids in these facilities, high-cost facilities, and they were getting money back from in various ways. And the judges, some of them had these zero-tolerance policies where, no, you do anything wrong, I'm sending you away. And they said, no, I have to do it over again. I thought that was a good policy. And it was just shocking to me that some of these kids that ended up in these facilities were with those really heavy hitters, dangerous folks. And if anything tells us on the research, you don't mix them. You're going to do more harm than you are good.
Yeah.
They were able to get away with that under guise of juvenile family court.
You know, sometimes you learn from the adults when you're young. You don't want them to learn what the adults can teach you when you put them together, right?
That's one of the things that's really right now, Mark, right in the up for legislation is because what's an adult, 16 years old, so they're trying to make an adult only 18 years old.
Good segue.
Yep.
Raise the age. Tell us about that.
All right. You know,
You're into that?
oh yes, very much. You know,
You do see kids 16 years old? Or?
yes, the majority of my career has been in juvenile. Actually, when I first came to work for probation, I was in adult supervision, and I'd have 85, 90 cases, and the people would come in and see me, and do you have a job? Do you have, and leave. And I'm sitting there, anybody? I have a bachelor's degree, and why you need to be educated to do this? It's just, are you complying with this? And I left and took a different job. I didn't like that. I came back, and my director at the time, Bill Bosley, great guy, and said, Mancini, I'm going to put you in a juvenile unit because I heard nightmares. You don't want to go in a juvenile unit. You got to work with the schools, the parents, and I'm like, Bill, don't put me in a juvenile unit. And he said, Mancini, I brought you back from the gutters of Long Island, and you'll go where I put you. Okay, Bill, and I love you for it. But it was the best thing that happened for me because, you know, we had this way of, even with PINS kids, those are kids that maybe are truant from school or runaways, staying out all night for curfew violations. And how we operated was, you're going to comply with this, or we're going to place you, thinking, oh, we're going to put you in one of these residential facilities, are going to make you better, and you're going to come back. And I'm sitting there, this isn't working, you know. To go into these facilities, learning to live in this structured environment. They cost $140,000 a year. Some of the state ones are up to $340,000 a year. They come back, and any change is undone because they're back to the same community and family and everything. Right. And
lack of structure.
So, you know, we've evolved and we've come a ways, but I don't think we've come far enough in juvenile justice in New York. There's been a lot of reform, and that's where, you know, I was on the governor's commission. I served on the commission, and it was a real privilege to do that because I've been at this for so long, and I've been seeing in the last few years a lot of good things coming in juvenile justice because it's pretty much been every county figures it out, and you can go to any county, and it's different in that county. There's not one juvenile justice oversight agency. There's different agencies. It's a collaboration of agencies, and sometimes, quite often, the services you're able to give a kid and family is dependent on the relationship that that director may have with the commissioner in order to pay for a service.
You know, I don't know what they call it now, but you would think the State Department of Probation would be, I don't know if that's under some other rubric now or whatever, but you know, that you would think they would set a statewide policy for all the counties to follow, and that hasn't
There are policies, but it's really up to the county on how they invest in those services, you know, and what in New York, you have social services access to this funding stream. It's called Preventative Services, and it's any program is reimbursed. The counties are reimbursed at a level of 62%, where probation 11%. But the youth has to be at risk of placement. Right. The issue with that is that may be uncapped, but you have a local, you know, your commissioner has to sell that to their legislative body. And often, you know, in Schenectady, we have a county manager that's been very supportive, and we have a great continuum of services to offer to youth and families to make sure that the community's safe, but we're giving them every opportunity to succeed. But in others, it's like, you go to a commissioner and says, look, my mandate is these young kids and protecting children. I'm not going to give money to these young kids who have committed offenses. And so quite often probation's left to try to figure it out. And so you have a high-risk kid that goes to see a probation officer with 30 cases. How are they going to work with the family, work with mental health issues, and do those things? And it's been a system that's been very ineffective. It's gotten a lot better. And I'm hoping with this legislation, it'll give New York a look at saying it's time to revisit juvenile justice and make us a lead in the nation rather than being so far behind.
Well, I remember under Mario Cuomo's administration, juvenile justice was a big thing. Yeah. I mean, it's part of the Decade of the Child, and you know, that Matilda undertook, and I just, you know, it all fell apart under Pataki. So raise the age. What is that campaign about?
Well, in New York and North Carolina are the only two states in the country where when you turn 16, you're considered an adult and prosecuted as an adult. There's been a big push change that and correct that.
To
There's
what?
to 8 when you turn 18, then you're
Okay.
considered an adult.
So raise the age from 16 to 18.
Yes.
And for when you can be considered as an adult, because the prosecutorial process
Yeah.
is different if you're 16 and juvenile as opposed to 18
Yeah.
and adult.
It's the criminal justice system was built on punish wrongdoing. The juvenile system correct wrongdoing. And the distinctions between the two systems are night and day. And I don't know how well people are aware of, like if you have I have a 15-and-a-half-year-old youth that gets arrested.
Okay.
We do what's called the predisposition report for the court. Our PO will do 9 of those a month because they're very intensive. We have mental health evaluations, we do assessments, and then we see what's going on and how do we link the youth with services, and we have a range of services.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if you're 16 and a half, same exact thing. You get a probation officer that does your pre-sentence investigation. They do 30 of those a month. It's like assembly line. In the juvenile, we'll go up, we can go to the county attorney who prosecutes them, the defense, the law guardian, the judge. Here's what we found out, here's what's going on, here's the plan. In adult, let's get the conviction, and then you really don't look at the needs and the risk levels, and it's just a matter of here. Now you're placed on probation. In the juvenile land, you get a probation officer with 15 cases that has access to home-based functional family therapy programs, youth advocate programs, a whole range of different programs. You're 16 and a half, you get a probation officer with 85, 90 cases, you have access to none of that. And when you don't make your appointments, in juvenile, we'll go out and get you and make sure you succeed. In adult, you don't, you fail, you end up in jail and prison. And it's just been a system that's perpetuated that, that's really...
So who's giving you opposition to this?
Mayor, can I?
Well, I want to hear...
I don't know if there's agreement on what it should look like. There's some folks that think what we're doing is working. Don't be light on its crime or be perceived as light on crime.
Is that the Senate Republicans?
I think that would be more, although folks we have talked to, they seem to be coming around, on board about.
But the Assembly Democrats are good with this?
Yeah. And I think, it's based on a lot of misperception of what it is, of what the juvenile system is.
Well, that means nothing's going to happen this session.
I don't know. I have to remain encouraged.
But they need to digest this over the last half of the year, so they can probably come back.
Well, Mark, I just want to say there is a counter argument. I'm not saying I agree with it, but like I'm a rabbi, so you always hear both sides of the issue. I mean, it's very nice that you say that a child would come better, but there's 15, 16-year-old kids that really do major crimes. It's not their little babies, if someone spills their milk, you're an idiot, you're an adult, but you're a kid, come on, what do you want from a kid? I actually had a story also, again, I go everywhere, they call me when there's unfortunately Jewish people that, and there are everywhere, but I say it's unfortunate, it obviously hurts me, but and it was in juvenile. So it's the first time I was in a juvenile detention center. So it's also like a naive, all right, there's a bunch of 10-year-old, 12-year-old little kids there. I'm telling you, Mark, they were bigger than I was. I'm telling you, this is a juvenile detention, they're bigger than I, they're big like you, you're a big person.
Because they work out. They
they're
have
tall.
the time.
I mean, you don't work out to be tall. I mean, they were tall and they're broad. And I mean, I don't know what crimes they are, I just saw them, but the other argument, a 14, 15-year-old could do some real nasty crimes.
Well, I read a case where a 13-year-old boy killed a 4-year-old, lured a 4-year-old into the woods and hit him over the head with a rock and killed him. And, the kid's going to be in jail for still to this day.
And in New York, you can go as young as 13 and prosecute them as adults. Because there are those that, for whatever happened,
they have a mental illness.
And there's and a sociopath or whatever that, no matter what you do, but that's such a small percentage, and that fear of.
It's interesting you say 13 because we're on the Jewish view, so I have to put something Jewish in. But the bar mitzvah is 13, and you're considered an adult. So on one hand, in Judaism, it really when you learn the Talmudic law, hey, 13, like you say 18 or you're trying to 16. Right. 13 is the age. Hey, you're responsible, pal, for your reactions. So there's a counter argument even to that, that maybe people were more mature in the olden days. They were working at 10, 13. Here at 13, you're and you're still in middle school, you know. So.
Yeah, but there's even a prayer at the bar mitzvah that the father says that says you're on your own, basically, right?
Well, that's Jewish law.
Yeah. So he says, so the father gets up in front of the congregation and reads this short passage and a blessing that says, you know, I absolve all my responsibilities for you, and you know, you go fend for yourself now. You know, at 13, you know, it's,
you could counter argument that because people are different today than they were a few thousand years. It's something I'm just throwing out for our viewers. You know, obviously there's an issue there. It's in front of the. You know, the Assembly and the Senate, they have to deal with that. You know, because again, just even, you know, Mark, if people are perceived as soft on crime, they, you know, that's an easy
there's such bodies and bodies of research now on evidence-based practices and don't do, you know, don't do no harm. And that and one of the attorneys I was with today was a study done recently where New Jersey, it's 18, and in New York that they did a study of those that were in the adult system, 17-year-olds and 18-year-olds in New Jersey, where the outcome, the recidivism, was much lower when they were treated in the juvenile system. Because in the, you know, in the juvenile system, and what you can't do in the adult system is, like, you know, public safety has got to be my #1 priority. I'm not going to bring someone back and supervise them in the communities if I don't feel I can do it safely. But I have a real range of opportunities and programs where I can go to the judge and say, I can keep this person safe, and if my POs can't engage them, what we've done is hire folks that have been through this system that will engage the youth, that know the community, that have an investment in that community for the safety of the community, that can help mentor them. And we can give the youth opportunities to succeed, because they've lived in a home that they haven't had those messages. They haven't had, you know, a father that's told them, here's what you need to do the right thing, that sometimes we need to operate in place of that.
You know, that's I just, you know, I know now that it tips my mind that a lot of former cons would probably be good for that. Do you hire former cons? You know, because like, hey, I went through it, I know you, I relate to you, and I'm telling you, you're on the wrong path. And, you know, a kid will take that better than, I know it's like a rabbi, well, I'm telling you what's wrong. Well, you're a rabbi, you know. And
probation officers that are ex-cons.
You know, I went through a training just recently, and this program that they do in the Bronx, and I've loved the guy that runs it. And I'm in I have a woman I've hired that has been through the system. She had her children taken away, history of abuse, was in our drug court. She's doing great now. I hire her through the city mission, who works with parents and helps, you know, because of the mistrust of the system, so she can engage with them to help navigate it. And then I'm actually looking at writing a program where I've got a couple folks in mind where they're ex-offenders, where they can partner with us. Because they're not gonna trust, I used to be able to go to the youth's house and, you know, I can tell when they're engaged. And it just seems that the kids are more lost today, that engaging them is harder. So we can partner with ex-offenders that have turned around. We can give them opportunities to, you know, hire them as our partners. Yeah.
So this commission is called the Commission on Youth, Public Safety, and Justice.
Justice, yes.
So that's the formal name of the commission, and you gave a report to the governor earlier this year?
Yes, it was a real thick report, very well done, I thought. A lot of work.
And this is where this Raise the Age came out of this report?
Yes.
Did anything else come out of this report, or is that the big thing?
That was the big thing, and then how to do it, you know, and how to do it. There were also some changes recommended for those that were convicted as YOs on sealing the records.
Youth offenders.
Yeah, youth offenders and sealing of records. Some states go as high as 24. New York, it's at 18 to raise it higher, so we're not preventing folks from those opportunities.
Well, you know what happens in those sealed records, that glue becomes very...
Yes, I know. Yeah. What does that mean, sealed?
Yeah, you know.
There's ways to find out.
The glue evaporates, and all of a sudden that paper just comes out of that sealed document, especially if you're running for office and you have a sealed document, and you know, somehow they can come unsealed. So anyway, anything else that you wanted to bring up that we didn't know enough to ask you? in our final minutes?
No, I appreciate coming here. I hope that the state does this. I think it'll really, there's been a lot of momentum in juvenile justice. If they were to pass this, it's a way for folks to come together in their communities, with their community stakeholders, say, we're gonna have a juvenile justice system that works. And you can partner with those folks that don't think it can. Come to the table with us and let's plan. You know, we all want youth to succeed. Well, keep them out of that system. It's not designed for it. Okay. And let's create a system where it can be effective.
You're doing great work and really at the forefront of helping the safety. I mean, you can be a policeman and grab a criminal, but just to change over a very Jewish idea, changing people instead of just incarcerating them and educating them and makes them good citizens. It just saves them, and it's a good human being, and then it changes society, and everything is good. So you're doing good work, and keep it up.
I appreciate that. Thanks.
Much success.
Thank you.